Anthony, welcome to the doctor's office. What can I do for you?
Yeah, so I have this issue where it seems that every sprint that I go through with my team always ends up with stories that end up being carried over sprint after sprint, sometimes multiple sprints. And I'm curious about exactly how I can solve this issue. I've reached out to others, and people seem to be having the same issue.
It's a very common thing indeed, but what have you tried? What are the things that you notice? Is there any underlying reason that seems to be popping up, or that's a recurring theme?
Well, I have seen some stories that are possibly too big, that needs to be broken down. I've also looked at, sometimes we don't account for people going on vacation or people getting sick, so there's not a big enough buffer. But those are the only things that I've come up with personally.
All right, so there are some issues that you can take into account during creating the creation of the forecast. So in your sprint planning, be a little bit more conservative. But that's just part one. I'll get into that in a minute.
Okay.
The biggest underlying issue is underestimating what's actually valuable. If there are things that in each sprint you're carrying stuff over into the next sprint, are those things really valuable? And what's happening? What's being considered in pulling those items in? What I feel or what I see happening quite a bit is a corporate disease, and it's very infectious, called TANS, T-A-N-S. There's always a next sprint. This is a corporate mindset, a really diluted mindset. It's damaging your value delivery ability. What that means, there's always another sprint, is where people and Scrum teams don't carefully consider what's actually valuable, what do we need to deliver right now, and what can we do later. And why is that? In most cases that I see that I've diagnosed with TANS, is that there's no clear distinction on the actual value, and there's also no sense of urgency, because most Scrum teams are being funded throughout the year, just a year is in ahead, and people feel that sense of security anyway. So there's no necessarily a burning platform for them to deliver right now, because there is no what if. If you don't make it, nothing happens. We'll be secured of a job anyway. So if you would change that funding, and this is an extreme example, but if you would change that funding into a startup mindset where your funding would depend on outcomes and impacts, like these are the things that we want to do. These are the product backlog items that we're going to turn into a valuable increment because we think this is going to sort this and this effect, and we're going to go for that outcome. We're going to achieve those outcomes and those goals. And if we don't make it, then we don't get any money to actually run the next 3 sprints. That's a whole lot different from we'll always have a job, our position has been funded anyway. And that's what I see is one of the most common things recurring. Like, what's the most valuable thing that we can deliver right now? How is it going to help us move forward to that product goals? And tell me if this resonates with you as well.
Sure.
Where this comes up, where this situation continues, you have no clear distinction between things that are valuable and fluff that's being added just for the hell of it. So you get a bloated, polluted product with a whole lot of solutions or features that not everyone might necessarily be using. Could that be the case with you as well?
There are times where that happens, and instead of carrying it over into the next sprint, I try to recommend the product owner bring it into the product backlog to take a look at it and see, is it still valid? If we're carrying it over multiple sprints, then what is the point of doing this story if it never gets done?
Exactly. And what's the usual response that you get?
Yeah, okay, let's take a look at it.
Could you imagine this? Yeah, go ahead.
I was going to say sometimes it works where the story becomes null and void and we get rid of it. Fantastic. But other times, no, we really need this for part of the product, so we need to carry this over.
Could you imagine this being an actual doctor's office and you come in with this issue and your doctor's like, we'll see. It'll be like, this could be life endangering. We need to do something right now. And that's the mentality that Scrum teams also need. We got to fix stuff right away, deliver value, and pull the plug as soon as the actual value expectation has been delivered. That way you'll save a whole lot of money. You'll be managing risk. But that's a hard thing to do. It's really hard to put your finger on that value. Recently, we had Will Saylor in the podcast, in the Mastering Agility podcast, where he was discussing these kind of flow metrics, checking the average age and how long it takes to go for product backlog items to go through the development cycle. That's an interesting thing as well, to see for how long these items have been on your product backlog. I mean, if it takes that long to actually be delivered, why are they there? For whom are you creating such a thing? If it's not being delivered and no one is asking or demanding it for it to be delivered, why is it even there?
Agreed.
I mean, I've seen teams that had product backlog items for over a year on their backlog before it was even considered to be pulled into a sprint. This is not necessarily going to help you move forward to any product goal.
Yeah. Well, the good news is, because of this issue, it solved another issue that we were having, was where the product backlog just became so polluted with all these stories that were no longer valid. They didn't hold any value. They weren't bringing anything to the product. So it was a great chance for me to help the PO to flush through the backlog. So that was a good thing.
Exactly. What did you see was the effect of it sorted?
A lot clearer, defined backlog on, what is really needed for the product and how we're going to get there. So, it's an actual story as opposed to, if you will, a back and forth all over the place, no real direction.
No, exactly. So do you looking at the sprint reviews, is that the moment to actually check in on the progress towards product goals, like the items or the increment that we've now created are going to help us because of X reason? Or is that something that's being skipped? All right, that's a good thing. So there is some feeling of value why that's happening.
Yes.
Summing that up, according to Professional Scrum, what you need to do with stuff that remains is consider, why is it still remaining at the end of the sprint? Is it still valuable? If not, throw it away. If it is still valuable, consider what to do with it. What I mean with that is either put it in the next sprint backlog or in the product backlog. Also do a re-estimation of the work remaining. And especially that last part is something that a lot of teams struggle with as well, where they say, yeah, well, just for the sake of the example, we estimated it at 40 story points, but now we've done 20 in this sprint, but that's not going to be reflected if we do a re-estimation. So we are just going to put 20 story points with the current sprint. Well, no, because they weren't done. Your product backlog items was not done. Therefore, that 20 that was not invested from the 40 that you initially estimated is not reflecting in your burn downs or whatever charts that you're using.
Yes.
That's too bad. It's not done. And then you put it back, you have a discussion, and then you continue. Does that help you?
Yes, it does. Thank you.
Cool. Any other questions?
I do have another question with regards to learnings that are captured from the retrospective. So, as you know, with a lot of retrospectives, there are some learnings to be carried over to the next sprint and future sprints.
Yes.
So I'm doing this with my team, yet my team discounts the learnings and don't apply them to the future sprints. How do I allow them to see that?
Or are they currently being made transparent?
Usually with the learnings, they are posted on the retro board, and all the team members are capable of going back because they have access to the board, and they're able to see those learnings again.
Okay, so yeah, basically you have a separate board for the learnings, and then you have your product backlog as well.
Correct.
That would be the first thing to try. These learnings coming out of the retrospective, these potentially impactful improvement items, as the Scrum Guide describes it, are pieces of work that need to be performed for the product, whether that's on the process side, on the individual, on the people side, whether that's on the tech side, it doesn't really matter. It's work for the product to be done, and therefore they need to end up either on the product backlog or on the sprint backlog. So make them transparent over there. They can repeatedly bring them in. For instance, during your sprint planning, during your daily Scrum, like this is the work that needs to be done. How is this going to help us move forward to the achievement of sprint goals? In the daily Scrum, you create your 24-hour plan for the achievement and raising the achievement, likelihood of the achievement of the sprint goal. How are these learnings going to help us improve and get to that point? If you make them transparent and people are being, what's the right word for that? It stays on top of mind, if you will.
Right.
And if it's put into a separate board that no one ever looks at, then it becomes really hard for them to actually do something actively with it.
It's a good point.
It is, isn't it? It's the same as, well, we know our house can burn down. Let's go buy fire extinguishers or smoke detectors. And then you put the smoke detectors somewhere in the basement, and then you don't ever do anything with it again. Like, all right, it's there. We're not using it, but we have it.
Yeah, it makes sense.
Scrum is about transparency, inspection, and adaptation. And at this point, you're stuck at just inspecting, saying, my house is on fire, then do nothing with it. You're just going to stand there, watch the house burn down, and think, oh, we could smoke some marshmallows with this. And then that's basically all that's going on.
Right.
Does it resonate with you?
Yes, it does. Thank you.
Cool. Are there any other things that I can help you with?
No, that's it. Thank you.
Awesome. Hope it helps. Hope to never see you back. If you have more questions, please let me know.
I appreciate it.
Most welcome.